Imagine this, a boy born in a dirt floor shack in the drought-stricken northeast of Brazil, one of 8 children to illiterate parents, who loses part of a finger in a factory accident, buries his first wife and child, leads massive strikes against a military dictatorship, gets thrown in prison, watches his hand-picked successor get impeached, then gets locked up himself on corruption charges, only to rise again, phoenix-like, and win the presidency for a third time at nearly 77 years old. That is the unbelievable true story of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the man Brazilians simply call Lula, the poor boy from the slums who became Brazil's most beloved president. Today, we are diving deep into his epic comeback story, the triumphs, the tears, the controversies, and the lessons that still echo across Latin America and beyond. Stick around, because this one will inspire you to never give up. Let's travel back to the beginning. On 27 October 1945, in the small town of Cates, near Guarnahans in Pernambuco, one of Brazil's poorest northeastern states, Lula was born into crushing poverty. His parents, Aristides and Eurydice, were sharecroppers scraping by on subsistence farming in a region plagued by droughts. Lula was the 7th of 8 children. Life was so harsh that when he was just 7 years old, his mother packed up the kids and moved over 1,500 miles south to the industrial outskirts of São Paulo in search of a better life. His father had already gone ahead years earlier but had started a new family, leaving them to fend for themselves. The family arrived in the booming but brutal industrial belt around São Paulo. Young Lula didn't have shoes. He worked as a shoeshine boy, sold peanuts on the streets, and did odd jobs. He barely went to school. He quit after the 2nd or 4th grade depending on the account, and didn't learn to read properly until he was 10 years old. Hunger was a constant companion. The family lived in a tiny backyard room behind someone else's house. This was the favelas and working-class periphery where millions of northeastern migrants dreamed of a factory job that could change everything. Lula's early life was defined by survival. He later said those years taught him the value of resilience and the raw injustice of inequality that would fuel his entire political life. By his early teens, Lula was working in factories. At 14, he became a lathe operator in a metalworking plant. Tragedy struck at 19 when a press machine crushed his left little finger, which had to be amputated. He didn't even get proper compensation at first. But that injury didn't stop him, it hardened him. He kept working, became a skilled metalworker, and in the early 1970s joined the Metalworkers Union in São Bernardo do Campo, the heart of Brazil's auto industry. This was during the military dictatorship that ruled Brazil from 1964 to 1985, a time of repression, censorship, and economic miracle that benefited the rich while workers suffered wage squeezes and dangerous conditions. Lula rose quickly in the Union. By 1975, he was president of the powerful São Bernardo Metalworkers Union. He wasn't a radical firebrand at first, he was practical, charismatic, and deeply connected to the rank-and-file workers. But the dictatorship's economic policies sparked massive discontent. Between 1978 and 1980, Lula led some of the largest strikes Brazil had ever seen, defying the military regime. Hundreds of thousands of workers walked out, demanding better wages and rights. The government responded with arrests, violence, and eventually threw Lula in jail for violating national security laws. He served time but emerged even stronger, a national symbol of resistance. Those strikes weren't just about pay, They were about dignity and democracy. In 1980, while still under dictatorship, Lula helped found the Workers' Party, or PT, Partido dos Trabalhadores. It was a groundbreaking left-wing party born from unions, intellectuals, liberation theology Catholics, and social movements. Unlike traditional communist parties, it emphasized grassroots democracy and broad alliances. Lula's charisma made him the face of this new political force. He had transformed from an illiterate factory kid into a powerful orator who could move crowds with his simple, direct Portuguese and unpolished authenticity. People saw themselves in him. The road to the top was long and painful. Lula ran for governor of São Paulo and lost. He ran for president in 1989, right after the dictatorship ended, and lost in the runoff to Fernando Collor. He ran again in 1994 and 1998 against Fernando Henrique Cardoso and lost decisively both times as Brazil stabilized economically under neoliberal reforms. Many thought Lula was finished, too radical, too associated with the old left. But he learned. In the late 90s and early 2000s he moderated his image. He ditched the more extreme rhetoric, courted business leaders, promised fiscal responsibility, and formed alliances. He famously said the PT had changed, and so had he. In 2002, with the campaign slogan, "Hope overcame fear," Lula won in a landslide in the second round, taking over 61% of the vote. Millions celebrated in the streets. A metal worker, a man from the slums, was going to be president of Brazil. Lula's first presidency from 2003 to 2010 is still remembered as a golden era for many Brazilians. He inherited a country with high debt and inflation fears, but a global commodities boom, soy, iron ore, oil, filled the coffers. Instead of radical revolution, Lula pragmatically continued many orthodox economic policies while launching ambitious social programs. The flagship was Bolsa Família, a conditional cash transfer program that gave money directly to poor families if kids went to school and got vaccinated. It reached millions, dramatically reducing poverty and hunger. Child malnutrition dropped sharply. Between 20 to 30 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty. The economy grew, unemployment fell, the minimum wage rose, and Brazil paid off its IMF debt early. Lula became a global superstar, hosting world leaders, pushing for more voice for developing nations, and helping broker international deals. Brazilians felt proud again. For the working poor, it felt like their president finally cared. He cruised to re-election in 2006 despite a corruption scandal called the Mensalão that hit his party. Lula himself wasn't directly implicated, and his personal popularity stayed sky high. By the end of his second term in 2010, his approval rating was over 80%. He left office as one of the most popular politicians on earth, handpicking his successor Dilma Rousseff, who won easily. It seemed like the PT era would last forever. But peaks are often followed by valleys, and Lula's story has plenty of controversy. During his administrations and especially under Dilma, massive corruption scandals erupted, centered on Petrobras, Brazil's state oil giant. Operation Car Wash, starting in 2014, uncovered a vast kickback scheme where construction companies paid billions in bribes for inflated contracts. Politicians and parties, including the PT, were accused of siphoning money for campaigns and personal gain. Lula was never convicted of personally pocketing huge sums during his presidency, but critics said the culture of corruption flourished under his watch and that he protected allies. Supporters argued it was a political witch hunt by elites and judges to destroy the left. After leaving office, Lula's life unraveled. Dilma was impeached in 2016 in what many called a parliamentary coup amid economic crisis and protests. Then, in 2017 to 2018, Judge Sergio Moro convicted Lula of corruption and money laundering over a luxury apartment allegedly received as a bribe. Lula maintained his innocence, calling it lawfare, using the legal system for political ends. He went to prison in April 2018, spending 580 days behind bars. Many of his supporters saw him as a political prisoner. His conviction barred him from running in 2018, paving the way for Jair Bolsonaro's victory. But even from prison, Lula remained a powerful symbol. The comeback was remarkable. In 2019, Brazil's Supreme Court ruled that defendants couldn't be imprisoned until all appeals were exhausted and Lula was released. Further rulings annulled his convictions on procedural grounds, saying the judge was biased. Lula hit the road again, traveling Brazil, reconnecting with the poor, criticizing Bolsonaro's handling of the economy, the pandemic, and environmental issues like the Amazon. In 2022, in an incredibly tight race, the 77-year-old Lula defeated incumbent Bolsonaro in the runoff, winning about 50.9% to 49.1%. They tried to bury me alive, he said, and here I am. It was one of the greatest political resurrections in modern history. Today, in his third term, Lula faces enormous challenges: polarized country, fiscal pressures, climate issues, and rebuilding institutions. But his story endures. What lessons can we draw from Lula da Silva's life? First, resilience beats almost everything. He endured poverty, physical injury, personal loss, jail, and political exile, yet kept going because he believed in something bigger than himself. Second, authenticity matters. In a world of polished politicians, Lula's rough edges and working-class roots connected him to millions who felt ignored. Third, pragmatism can achieve more than purity. He moderated when needed, built coalitions, and used economic growth to fund social progress. Fourth, democracy is messy and fragile. Power can be weaponized through courts or media, but people's voices ultimately matter. And finally, hope is a powerful political force. Lula's life proves that a boy from the slums can change a nation. Lula's journey isn't perfect. There are legitimate questions about corruption in his party and whether power corrupted some around him. Brazil remains deeply unequal, violent, and divided. Yet his impact is undeniable. He gave millions dignity, put Brazil on the global map as a serious player, and showed that politics can be a tool for the many, not just the few. His comeback reminds us that no matter how dark it gets, with determination and the support of ordinary people, it's possible to rise again. So next time life knocks you down, think of that kid from Pernambuco shining shoes on the streets of São Paulo who became president not once, not twice, but 3 times. The story of Lula is the story of Brazil itself, full of pain, promise, struggle, and extraordinary resilience. Thanks for watching this deep dive. If you found inspiration here, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What's the biggest lesson you take from Lula's life? Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep fighting for what matters.